We left off yesterday that the reason why man was given free choice and a person wasn't put in a position to naturally be a beneficiary of God's goodness, the way we explained, because to be the ultimate beneficiary, to be able to cleave to Hashem, you have to assume a similar profile as Hashem, as God is himself. As God, his perfection is not determined or dependent on anything other than himself. Identically, a person, his level of perfection, if he would be created perfect, that perfection is not attributed to himself. It's just the reality of who he is. But if you are the one who actually created that level of perfection, so that is not attributed to anybody but yourself. Therefore, you're creating a stronger commonality to be able to have a relationship with Hashem. So there's a greater compatibility. Therefore, you're a greater beneficiary of the ultimate good, which is cleaving to God, being exposed to God himself. That's how that's the way it's explained. Now, but the Ramchal, Rabbi Lutzatno cites Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud, it says that a person who eats not of his own, it's being in a position of being embarrassed, being shamed. You're eating shamed bread. Could you imagine? Person doesn't succeed in his life and he has to become a beggar. And he has to come on to others to give him bread. Firstly, he's ashamed that he has to take because he didn't earn it himself. Secondly, when he meets his benefactor, he looks him in the eye. His whole existence is due to somebody else's being a benefactor, giving. It's shameful. You have difficulty having a relation with that person because you're on the taking end. So therefore, God doesn't want us to be in that position. Not because shame. It's only expressed that way because if you cleave where you don't deserve to cleave, the attachment is not a real attachment. I'll give you an example. A person belongs to the Mensa Club. Right? This is guys who could say numbers, 20 numbers backwards. Those are the Mensa Club people, okay? So it's a light word, okay? So, and this person, he gets a pass to go in to the meeting. And he rubs shoulders with all these people. And, and he has all the amenities of this certain club. But he realizes he doesn't begin to understand what they're even talking about, these people. His IQ is so much less than everybody else's IQ. But he's taking the amenities, and they're happy to give it to him. But the real person realizes he doesn't belong there. He feels out of place. The fit is not right. A person who's just endowed, given a perfect state, and due to that, you're able to be a beneficiary of God's perfect state, the fit is not right. But if you're a self-earner, because your level of perfection is due to your own initiative, because you're endowed with choice, and it's only because you chose to do the right thing, which is the will of God, which is only attributed to yourself, therefore you achieve the level of commonality, therefore you're compatible, therefore you're fully in a position to fully benefit from God's holiness. That's the understanding. So when the Jerusalem Talmud says that if you eat of someone else's, there's a shameful state that you can't look that person in the eye, meaning when you look at God, when you have that relation with God, you really don't belong it because it's not earned. You didn't earn it. Therefore, the attachment, the level of association doesn't feel right. It isn't right. That's the understanding. So this is what the intellect responds to the soul. So the soul says, I hear what you're saying, but if you have more to elaborate, I'm open to hear. It should be broadened and deepened to have a greater understanding of what it's all about. I always say people ask questions, and they're good questions. So I say it's easy to ask a question. If you ask good, it's easy to ask a question, but it's much more difficult to give an answer to that. If the question is a good question, it's more difficult to answer that good question. If the question is a good question, the question is not an appropriate question. Sometimes you can't answer it because where the place where that question is coming from, there's no answer because the question doesn't even begin. But if the question is a good question, due to your understanding of the complexity of what you're dealing with, because it's so complex, therefore the answer is not so simple. How to elucidate the whole situation. So this over here is something profound. If ultimately the objective is to be a beneficiary of the ultimate good, which is God himself, because God is absolute in every aspect of his being, so what do we have to struggle? What do we have to have our feet put to the fire and to be challenged continuously? So we answered the question. The question is a good question, very good question. But if you understand the difference between bringing about something due to your own initiative or being endowed to you, it's a different reality. It's very interesting. Very often, if a person has two parents who are geniuses, it's very likely that the children will have superior IQs because it's just part of the gene profile of the family. But the child's born with a genius IQ, now goes to school, he's superior to all his classmates. But it takes him a moment to understand that they're working on it for a week. And he feels superior to them. What do you feel superior? Do you know why you have this genius mind? Because your parents were geniuses. It's unrelated to you. But yet, the way people behave, it does make a difference. I have what it takes. You people don't have what it takes. But what about the one with the genius IQ goes to the one who endowed him with the genius IQ? And you pride yourself that you have the genius IQ. The person looks at him and says, what are you talking about? You only have that because I gave it to you. How do you pride yourself? And if you really have self-respect to a degree, you'd feel almost embarrassed because your special level is unrelated to yourself. So that the people admire you and praise you for what you are has nothing to do with you. But what about you're able to achieve what you achieved only due to your hard work, your studies, endless hours of investment, of development. That's why I'm what I am. So why did I achieve this level of perfection? Because it all is attributed to my initiative, my effort. Therefore, that does have to do with me. Why are you that? Do you think it happened in a day? There's a lifetime. You have a doctor that's one of a kind of diagnosticians. He's been a doctor for 50 years. They say, Doc, how do you do it? You look at the patient for a second, you know exactly what the problem is. He says, do you think I had this ability when I first graduated medical school? This is through being through the school of hard knocks, exposed to endless cases of illness, disease, whatever it is. Therefore, I'm able to sense what it is immediately. But that came about through spending a lifetime in medicine. That's when you have it. What about a person just graduates medical school and you have a wire in your ear, and whenever they ask you to do a diagnosis and there's a camera and the doctor who's been doctor 50 years, he whispers in your ear what the diagnosis is. So you're talking like you're diagnosing it, but it's not you. And then afterwards, it's found out that you only are giving the correct diagnosis because you have that wire in the ear and the camera that's this expert doctor is giving you and people believed it was you. Do you feel ashamed? Why? I gave a correct diagnosis. What difference if it's me or somebody else? There's a big difference. If it's you, it's you. It's somebody else, it's not you. So when you thought who you were, it's not you. But if it's you, that's who I am. And that's my ability. That's my capacity. Therefore, I'm valued the way I'm valued because that's my value, that I can make a diagnosis, which most can't make that diagnosis. Person perfectly, because then there'd be a certain shamefulness for it. Because I'm only perfect, not to my own initiative, so therefore I have no really relevance to the perfection of God, because God is perfect in his own right. It's not attributed to anything but himself. As a result of that, the fit is not correct or appropriate. But if it's through my own initiative, it is. That's where it is. You know, they used to say, there were people many years ago, when I grew up on the Lower East Side, people who had businesses on Broadway, textile business, very wealthy people. If you'd see them on the street, you wouldn't realize how wealthy they were. And they had the sons who they sent their sons to Ivy League colleges until this is in the 50s. But every summer, their sons had to work the summers in Grossinger's, in the Concord, all these hotels. Why? So my father once asked this person, he lived in our building, you have the ability, your sons don't have to work. So he says, I want to teach my sons the value of the dollar. And if they don't work for the dollar, they will not appreciate the value of the dollar. But if they understand it comes with difficulty, it's not so easy, then when they will have the money, they'll appreciate what the money is. That's what he answered my father. To have an appreciation for something, you have to actually go through the process. But if it's endowed to you, you don't appreciate what you have, although you understand what the buying power of money is. But to truly appreciate it, you have to create it, you have to earn it. So earned perfection, when you do it yourself, you value what the value of perfection is. Therefore, when you come up to God and you see what his perfection is, then you really cleave to that, attach yourself. But if your perfection itself is not due to your own creation, it's an endowment, it's not the same. This is unrelated to you. It was given to you. It's an endowment. Therefore, as a result of that, if the whole objective is and the concept is to be a beneficiary, you will not be going to be the beneficiary at the ultimate level. Therefore, God gave us choice, despite the fact of the struggles that we have to be put through to succeed. But if you do succeed, then ultimately you really have the ultimate benefit because you have that commonality with God, and therefore you have a full appreciation and benefit of his goodness and kindness for that reason.